Hey folks, and welcome to Typology, the show in which we explore the mystery of the human personality through the lens of the Enneagram. My name is Anthony Skinner. I'm the producer of the show. We're certainly happy to have you here. We've got a great guest today, Alli Worthington. Alli is an Enneagram 7, and she is a business coach and advisor. She's worked with Disney, Procter & Gamble, Microsoft. She's been on the Today Show. She is the author of The Year of Living Happy, Fierce Faith, and Breaking Busy. Ian has a fantastic conversation with Alli. I know you're going to enjoy this. Really, really helpful conversation. A very self-aware Enneagram 7. A lot to glean from this. She brings a lot of treasure to this conversation. So can't wait for you to hear it. And without any further ado, here is the host of our show, Ian Cron.
Alli Worthington, welcome to Typology.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Yes, I am so excited to have you on. You, best-selling author, business coach, author. Man, you have a portfolio life and Enneagram 7.
I am. I mean, doesn't that speak to the life of an Enneagram 7 to want to do so many things?
It absolutely does. I'm glad you said that because it's true. 7s, like when I'm coaching, when I'm doing corporate work, people ask me, what do I do with this guy or this woman? Because they're so talented, but they are so unwieldy. You know what I mean? Like they're all over the map. And I'm like, you need to give them a very long leash and make sure that their job description is varied. Like that they have 4 or 5 things they do so that they can move around like a portfolio and go, okay, today I'm going to do this and I'm going to move to that. And I said, if you do that, it'll be great. If you trap them into one thing, they will last about 3 months.
You know, it's funny. I've always been an entrepreneur, but I took about 3.5 years off to help build a ministry for a friend. So it's funny, when she asked me to come work for her, I said, absolutely not. I know myself. I would make a terrible employee. Like I have enough self-awareness to know this should not happen. Well, it ended up happening. And it was a wonderful experience, but when I had not taken an Enneagram test, everyone told me I was a 3. Everyone assumed I was a 3. And I was traveling to go speak somewhere one weekend, and I brought your book with me. And I read about type 7, and I cried on the plane because everything in my life professionally was exactly what was sucking the life out of me. And that was this realization, I've got to find something else. Like this, what I thought was wrong about me was actually me just being a 7. And I didn't have to apologize for it. And I didn't have to keep fitting myself into a box. And I didn't have to apologize for it anymore. I felt so liberated on that flight to Seattle, crying in front of strangers, realizing there's nothing wrong. I'm just a 7.
Let's just close the show right there because that is like, seriously, like, well, first of all, as an author, as you know, writing is a pretty solitary game, right? And so when you hear somebody say something like that they had a moment with something, you're like, oh, God, I guess that was worth it. Secondly, I think one of the things that the Enneagram does is allow people to experience the moment of alignment. And they say, oh, I thought there was something wrong with me. Mm-hmm. And then they have this moment where it's like, nah, it's not that at all. It's just that I'm this person. Mm-hmm. And that's so beautiful. So I'm glad to hear that happened for you.
Oh,
so
yeah.
Excited.
It was completely life-changing. Yeah. Never look back.
You have a book dropping soon, right? In September. Mm-hmm. Standing Strong, A Woman's Guide to Overcoming Adversity and Living with Confidence. I want to hear the backstory.
Well, it's quite interesting. As a 7, it's interesting that I write books about struggle, but I feel like my lot in life as an author is to go through something, to figure out what I've learned in it, and then write about those lessons. with standing strong, what happened for me is right about the time I realized from your book, everything I'm doing professionally isn't working for me. At the same time, I knew it was time for me to leave my job. Really felt called to leave, but was terrified to leave. For me, my husband and I have 5 sons. I like to say, I like to start businesses like I like to have children. I like a lot of them. And I like a lot of experiences. But I'm running this ministry for a friend. I know that my season there needs to be up, but I'm terrified to leave. My husband is a stay-home dad. He's retired from his job, but he had just started going into remission from an illness that he had for many years. So we have all these kids. I have a husband who's sick and all of this pressure on me. And for me to kind of go, okay, I feel this calling. I know it's time to go back on my own, but self-doubt is really what came in and held me back, because as a 7, you want to know you're going to be okay. You don't want to be stuck in pain. You don't want to do anything where you're not only potentially going to hurt yourself, you're going to hurt everyone around you. So I kind of use my story as the narrative arc, but really standing strong is just a message to women and men for that point, to be careful to not let self-doubt take us out.
Okay. So do you have a 6 wing?
Okay. Now this is where I get to ask you all the good questions. I feel like I have a 6 wing in my personal life, but I feel like I have an 8 wing when it comes to my work.
Interesting.
Yes. Like I'll build a new business. I'll launch a new program. I'll do anything. I'm fearless. I'll go for it. But my 7 wing makes me be like, should I have a year's worth of freeze-dried food just in case the economy crashes? So I'm fearless in one sense, but in the other sense, I'm like, especially with COVID, I was like, well, I knew I should have been a stockpiler all this time, and I've missed my chance, and now we don't have toilet paper.
Right. Yeah.
So the 6 wing was in full effect in spring, to some degree. But in my work, I'm relatively fearless and like to push, and I tend to be more assertive and aggressive.
Oh, you have brought up such a great point, and I'm so grateful because, so I just launched a course. It's called True You, a deeper exploration into your Enneagram type. And the reason I did it, I'm being shamelessly self-promotional right now at the expense of our time. Oh, well.
As you should. Hello.
Well, no, because it does relate. I wasn't looking for an opportunity to do this, but the deal is, this course was designed because most of the time there are great courses out there in the Enneagram, but they go through all 9 types. So your type only usually gets 30 minutes, maybe, right? So what I did is I designed this course where there are 9 different trainings, 90 minutes each. So I do a deep dive into each type's like instincts, subtypes, wings, passions, virtues, right? But it goes deeper, and you can cherry pick. So you could say, oh, I just want to do the one on 7, or I want to do, what's your husband's number?
A 3.
Okay, I want to do 7 and I want to do 3. So I'm just going to pull those 2 out and get those. Or whatever. How old are your kids?
12 to 21.
Oh, okay. So that's perfect. You could say, I really don't understand my 4, so I'm going to grab that one and blah, 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 right? You can cherry pick. But one of the things I say about wings is that I believe that people tend to think, oh, I'm a 7 with a 6 wing, period. And it's static. And what they don't understand is that the Enneagram is so fluid and dynamic. That's why the whole system is set up this way with lines and arrows flying all over the place. It's not like you stay in one place with a wing and you're stuck with that combination, right? I like to think of those wings as being not just merely descriptors that sharpen your understanding of your core type, but actually they're resource points. So you can, I think, at home say in your personal life, I have to lean into my 6 wing here. I have 5 children. I have a husband who is sick, and I need to be ready for what could come. It's just so unconsciously you're migrating over toward the resources and the thinking of that 6, right? And then in your business life, you're like, I can't afford to be this self-doubting, right? I can't afford it. So I'm going to lean into my 8 wing. And in that sphere, that's where I'm drawing gifts and energies and traits from. And I'm telling people all the time, listen, don't wait to do that unconsciously, because you can actually just do it consciously. Like, just decide, okay, I got to do 7 with 6 right now. And I can, because that's part of the dynamic of who I am. Because there's no such thing as a wing. There's no such thing as a bird that flies well with 1 wing.
That's a great point.
Right? You have 2 wings, and they're both available to you. Now, one will be dominant, but it doesn't mean that the other one can't work for you.
I love it, because that is one of the things with Enneagram trainings. You get just a little piece of about you. As a business coach, one of the first things I do with my clients is I have them go through the whole test. And then as we're working on their business, I'm also leading them on, okay, go to this resource, go to this. So I feel like that course would be amazing because it's so in depth.
Right. And I actually use it in the corporate world. And even though I self-identify as a person of faith, it's very friendly for anybody. So I can use it in corporate, because if it gets all faithy, corporate people get all wigged out, right? So it's a really good thing to have something where I think both audiences will feel like they got what they needed, that was very intentional on my part. All right. So what is, in your mind, standing strong? What does that mean? What does beyond what the book even says, like, what does that feel like? What is that like for a 7 to stand strong?
I think, well, for me as a 7, it looks like not being panicked when things are difficult and things are painful, because I think I look back now understanding the Enneagram, and so much of my life makes sense of how I was always one to reject other people before they can reject me.
Right.
And because I couldn't deal with the potential pain that could come along with relationships. So I was quick to end them. It's a miracle my husband and I have been married forever. So for me, standing strong looks like living life knowing that things are difficult, that we do have a lot of struggles, that we will have to live in a amount of pain, depending on what season of life we're in, but that we will be okay. And so much of, I think, what we need to do to move forward as we all find ourselves in, the craziness of 2020, what's so important for us right now is a level of self-awareness, so we don't accidentally take ourselves out of the game before we ever get a chance to run again, because the self-doubt, the uncertainty, the beating ourselves up, the inner critic, those are all things that come at us. And if we don't learn to manage those things and have self-awareness about how we're living and our thought matter, our thoughts and our mindset, we're going to get taken out by these things with how hard life is right now.
Hey everybody, one of the lessons I've learned over the years is that not everybody benefits from a traditional 50-minute counseling session. And this is why some people can go to couples therapy or personal counseling for a long time and never really get anywhere. This is why I'm such a believer of intensive counseling and my friends at Restoring the Soul in Colorado, created by my longtime friend Michael Cusick to help couples or individuals experience deep change in half-day blocks over 1 or 2 weeks. Now listen, if you can't wait months or years to get to the bottom of an issue or to experience breakthrough, you need to get in touch with my friend Michael and his extraordinary team of counselors at Restoring the Soul. If you're looking to get out of the rut you're in, but can't wait months or years, call Restoring the Soul today for a free consultation with Michael's staff. Call 303-932-9777 and learn how their intensive counseling process can help you. As a special bonus, just for Typology listeners, make sure to visit www.restoringthesoul.com/typology to download their PDF called 5 Ways Unaddressed Trauma May Be Derailing Your Relationships. Man, you have actually just given me a question that I am going to ask all my sevens, which is, how have you coped with 2020? Because just when you turn around, right, there's something else. You like turn around like, oh, great, California is burning down. Oh, great, there are tornadoes running through Nashville. We have COVID. It's like it just seems to be mounting all the time.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to ask my sevens, like, how are you coping in a world where pain and suffering and confusion is inescapable?
Well, I'm very familiar with hard times. So I grew up in poverty, kind of pulled myself out of that. I was a stay-home mom for many years of my kids. When my fifth son was born, we lost our home and were homeless, lost everything we owned except what fit into 2 little pod storage units, had to live with my grandfather for a summer. And my husband would, we'd go to McDonald's Playland every day. The kids would play. My husband would send his resume out everywhere. And I would Google, how do you start a business on the internet? Because I didn't have time to do anything but figure out how to make money.
Right.
That was 2008. And business blew up. Things were great. Things were wonderful, amazing, doing all the things that a 7 likes to do. And then my husband got sick. And I felt like life crashed down around me. And so we went through years of him being very, very sick, not sure if he was going to make it. And then he comes out of sickness. I leave the job that I took that gave me security in a really hard season, build my business back again. And I'm like, okay, this is it. 2020 is the year. I'm launching a book. I had great speaking events all the time. As a 7, my heart is in amusement parks. If I go, I want to ride a roller coaster 10 times in a row. We had this great vacation where we went to Disney and Universal and we did all the things. And then just like that, life shuts down. Mm-hmm. And for me in March, it threw me way into the 6th wing. I was sure everybody's companies were going to fall apart. Everything was going to fall apart. It was basically the end of the world and we're going to live under a bridge. And so I had these weeks where I would do a coaching call, with clients who are trying to manage their surgery center when no one can do elective surgeries, and I'm giving them advice and telling them what to do. But then I would get off the phone and I'd cry because I was managing my own terror of what in the world is going to happen. And starting in April, I realized, okay, the world isn't going to melt down. We are going to survive this thing. This isn't the end of the world. And I started to calm down. And at this point, as a 7, I kind of wake up and look at the news every day and check the dumpster fire, as I said before, that's Twitter, and go, okay, everything sucks, but we're still standing.
Yeah.
We're going to get through this. It's not going to be the end of the world, but man, it is tough on a 7.
It is tough on a 7. Probably easier for a 4, because we just sort of anticipate that life is hard. We actually kind of come alive in difficult moments, particularly for others, like being present, like just being there for other people when they're struggling, But one of my favorite books that, came out years ago, and it's a great business book, as The Art of Possibility. And written by, what's his name, Xander, who is the principal conductor of the Boston Symphony. And it's such a great book for personal self-development, but also if you're doing anything in the corporate world, this book is a must-read. And I'm sure that most consultants have read it, but if you haven't, my gosh, read this book. But one of the things that his wife mentions in the book, which is so brilliant, they have these 10 rules or these, whatever, is, basically accepting life as it is, like life on life's terms. This is, you don't get to determine the terms. And, but learning to accept life on life's terms means that it's almost like what Thomas Merton said, no, it wasn't Merton, it was Montaigne, who said, he who resists suffering suffers most.
Yes.
It's the resistance. It's not the pain that's bad. It's the resistance to the pain that hurts.
Yeah, there was a book, a M. Scott Peck book, and he starts out, I'm going to butcher it. You probably know the line, how once we accept that life is hard, it can stop shocking us that it's hard and we can make peace with it and move on. And that to me, gosh, probably read that 25 years ago. It was life-changing. That
Yeah.
as long as I keep being shocked that things are hard, it's going to keep throwing me off.
Yeah. It's the first line of the book is life is difficult.
Yes.
That it was such a sort of a famous opening line for a book because, immediately everybody went, yeah, life is difficult. And the sooner you accept it, the better off you'll be, is essentially what that opening paragraph says.
Yeah.
So now there's another book everybody needs to read. It is about 30 years old, but so that means that there's a ton of people out there who are too young to have read it, and they should. And it's a great book for sevens.
Oh, it is. And, one of the things that I coach my clients on and I talk about a lot is sometimes when things are difficult, when we keep going up against challenges, we take that as a sign that we're not supposed to do what we're doing.
Right.
And as soon as we feel uncomfortable, as soon as things feel difficult, we go, I thought this was for me, but this isn't for me. I'm going to go on a path where things are easy. And I think we miss out on so much in life by not just saying, the pain that I'm feeling, the difficulty that I'm feeling, this is all part of me getting to where I'm supposed to go.
Right. Right. One of my favorite questions to ask clients, not original to me, when they hit a bump in the road, and it's one that I ask myself a lot, is, and I'm sure you use this question too, which is, okay, you've just described a problem, you've just described a crisis. And your question is, how do I get things back to the way they used to be? Which is the wrong question, right? Yeah. The right question is, what does this make possible? So it's like you just turn, how questions are, like it's the thing that we, in the world of consulting, it's the thing that the gift we have to craft, we have to learn, is that the disequilibrating question that turns the person on their head. And you say, okay, so this division just died, or you've had this scandal. What does this now make possible that was not possible before, And I think of 2020 like that, man. It's like, and sevens could ask that question. Any number could ask that question when they hit pain, to say, what does this make possible for me? Instead of, how do I get out of here? How do I get out of here?
Because there's so much, even though we still can't really do much. As a seven, I'm always looking for the excitement. I'm driving 3 hours west to go to a drive-through safari park, drive-in movies, whatever it is. And I've had to be really careful to manage myself as a seven, not to try to numb out.
Yes.
I've binge watched a couple of different series already. As a seven, I don't pace myself well. It's not like I'm going to watch one every night. I'm going to stay up till 4 a.m. and I'm going to watch 7 episodes. Yeah. So just being self-aware to not numb out in this season, I feel like is really good for me.
Yeah. I always think that one of the books I'd like to write, actually the book I'm writing on now actually could be this title. It's just called Living Wide Awake. Like that as another way of saying living with more self-knowledge, awareness, self-observation, and self-regulation. Like just being able to say, I got to be awake, man. Like I'm only going to do this thing once. So I really I'd like to go through it fully conscious, like with conscious awareness and intentionality would be a really good way to spend most of my life versus wandering around like in a half sleep state, which is where most people seem to live. And that is the power of questions, is they tend to wake us up,
Yeah, totally.
All right. Let's talk about the inner critic for a second, because as we all know, sevens, when they're not in a great space, where do they go?
Oh, I don't have two things. This is interesting. This will be fun for you to pick it apart. I don't actually have an inner critic.
Really?
So when I'm writing about the inner critic, I have to interview a lot of people who do have a really loud inner critic to know how to serve people well. In fact, the Enneagram, I feel like, has made me a better writer, because anything I'm teaching, like if there's a chapter on community or a chapter on communication, chapter on anything in the books, I make sure to look at my advice through the lens of each of the numbers. So, and I have people who are different numbers read the manuscript and give me feedback on if there's something relevant to them, because otherwise I'll just write a book for sevens. So yeah, I don't have an inner critic, but I am really quite horrible when I'm under stress, because that's when I become critical. I'm nitpicky. I'm harsh. I will just find fault and be horrible. I've been that person under stress as a leader. I've been embarrassed about it in the past, but now I recognize, like, it happens with my kids, or it can happen with friends. And when I'm in that, that's my big red flag that I'm not doing well, that I'm under stress and I need to get it under control.
Yeah, you typically go to the low side of 1.
Yeah.
Right. So, and I say typically because people surprise us all the time. And whenever we talk about personality, we're talking about probabilities, not absolutely certain prediction. And that's interesting that you don't have an inner critic in that space.
Yes. What
you
does that
don't take
mean?
on that
Analyze
dimension
me.
of the 1.
Yeah.
Well, it's just interesting that you don't take on that particular trait of the 1. I'm a 4, which I think has the second loudest inner critic on the Enneagram. So, I know in the book you talk about dealing with the inner critic. So help me. Because I've got one, man.
So I talk to so many friends about how their inner critic behaves, what's going on. And so really have this thought that many people think that the inner critic is a higher version of themselves. And if they just listen to that inner critic, they will do things better. They'll perform better. They'll be a better husband or wife or employee. And I think of the inner critic kind of as a mentally unstable nanny, just screaming at us all the time. Like, I picture the inner critic as like a Mrs. Doubtfire. Because the inner critic doesn't know more than we know. The inner critic isn't trying to help us achieve something great. The inner critic is just trying to keep us safe and to make sure that we don't fall down and we don't make mistakes, like a mentally unstable nanny, right? Just screaming after us all the time. And when we shift the focus to, oh, this voice in my head isn't helping me be better. This voice is just terrified that I'm going to do anything that's going to hurt me or make me feel uncomfortable. But the only way we do anything in life is to make mistakes and to do things that make us feel uncomfortable. So I feel like that little shift in thinking with the inner critic takes some of the power away. The inner critic doesn't know more than we do.
Yes. And in fact, going back to that book, The Art of Possibility, he talks about doing a master class with a bunch of musicians, I think at the New England Conservatory. And, as you can imagine, inner critics inside of young musicians or actors or stuff like that is outrageous, right? Anthony was a songwriter, early on, man. Woo, mistakes are tough. And that inner critic is saying, this song sucks, or this book sucks, or that sentence, it's like, oh, that's not Faulkner. It's like, well, it's kind of weird you thought you were going to write like Faulkner. But, he was talking about this cellist that he was working with, that at the end of this guy's performance, he felt so much shame, right, around minor mistakes, right? And there's 2 ways that he responded. One was, when you make mistakes, throw your hands up in the air and yell, how fascinating. You know what I mean? Like, just throw your hands up in the air and go, how fascinating, rather than, oh, I'm such a piece of crap. It's like, approach the mistake as something that's an object of interest and fascination. And what does it mean? What do I learn? This is fantastic. So in, like, while he's rehearsing, like, with small chamber orchestras, sometimes people will go, how fascinating, in the middle of it when they make mistakes. And I'm like, that's a great way to deal with an inner critic.
Love that.
Right?
Yeah.
And he has another mantra that is actually a little dirty, so I won't actually say what it is, but it's a BTFI. Do you remember that from the book? It's beyond the blanket. Beyond the blanket. Where it's like, throw caution to the wind, man. Like, go beyond the blanket.
Okay, so if you are a 4 And you have
Yes.
the second loudest inner critic. How do you manage yours?
Well, I'm older now, and I can tell you how I dealt with it when I was younger. I used drugs and alcohol. I mean, that was like one.
I'm sure that's very common. Yeah.
Yeah. And then in between the drugs and alcohol, the inner critic was even louder. So that's not a good cycle, as you can imagine.
Not the most productive.
Not the most productive. Then when that period of my life ended, and I had to face the inner critic and the why it was there and all of that stuff. Number one, as a therapist, I've always been a big believer in finding a good therapist, which is not an easy thing. Because I think one of the things that has to happen is that you must externalize the voice. So, because as long as it's in your head, you think people ascribe like what the in Latin is called the vox Dei in the Catholic Church, right? The voice of God. You hear it as the voice of God. Like, this is God.
That's why it's so dangerous.
You give it that authority, right? And so Anthony actually just sent me a text. Tell her about the happy birthday song. My people are probably tired of hearing me say this, but you could try this with your clients. It sounds crazy, but it works. I tell people who have an inner critic, I say, okay, can you just tell me your top 10 hits? Like, what are the 10 things you're always criticizing yourself about? I'm a crappy mother. I should have, if I had only done this, I could have gone to this grad school and become that. It's like this long list, right? And I said, great, write it out. And I make them write it out. And then if it's a client of mine, I'll say, now I want you to sing that list to the tune of Happy Birthday. Right.
Wow.
And I say, and I want you to do it in front of me. You have had to establish rapport here, but they look at me like, what are you talking about? I said, don't ask me any questions. I just want you to sing that list to the tune of Happy Birthday out loud in front of me right now. And they get about halfway through the list, and what do you think they do?
They just start laughing, I'm sure.
They just start laughing.
Yeah.
Because they're listening to the absurdity. The song brings absurdity. And to hear themselves singing these crazy ideas to themselves, they realize that's how seriously I should take that inner critic.
Yeah, that's so good. And imagine it looking like Mrs. Doubtfire.
And imagine it looking like Mrs. Doubtfire. and when she gets real active, go, come here, baby. I just need to give you a hug. Okay, come here. Mrs. Doubtfire, you need a little bit of a hug, right?
You need to chill.
You need to chill. And that's true of, there's no such thing as a type that doesn't actually. I mean, some types have quieter inner critics. Sometimes the inner, it's basically what it is. It's a swollen superego is what it is, right? That's what Freud would say. Yeah. Your id and your ego are being dominated by this loud mother voice, archetypal, or father voice doing this thing, right? Or the culture doing this thing. And it's just overactive. It's just an overactive superego. And so if you can learn to sort of view it that way and just don't give it so much power just because you think something doesn't make it true, So whatever, Go, do something else with it, Hey, Anthony.
Hey, Ian.
What if I told you you could get high quality, organic, and non-GMO groceries delivered to your door for a lot less than you're paying now and help out families in need?
I would definitely want to know more about it.
Let me tell you, that's what I'm doing since I discovered Thrive Market. As a proud Thrive Market member, I get the products I love, and my paid membership provides a free membership for a low-income family.
Amazing.
Right?
Yeah.
So let me tell you this. I've ordered off their website, which, by the way, is very user-friendly. It's not at all like one of those websites where you feel like you just fell into some kind of terrible labyrinth. They have a couple of things I love. They have Jackson's Honest Sweet Potato Chips. Have you ever had those?
No.
You're welcome.
All right.
Jackson's Honest Sweet Potato Chips I got there. And
Yep.
You know, I used to be a Go Lean cereal guy, right? Because I'm so healthy. But now I eat organic coconut flakes cereal from Thrive Market.
Can't wait to try that.
Right? It's changing my whole life. Now, as a special offer for Typology listeners, try Thrive Market and become a member risk-free. Just go to thrivemarket.com/typology.
That's right, Ian. Join today and you'll get a free gift of your choosing up to $24 in value. Tell them where to go again, Ian.
That's Thrive, THRIVE, market.com/typology, TYPOLOGY, to start your risk-free membership and get up to $20 towards your first order. thrivemarket.com/typology. You have a surprising secret to confidence, I'm told.
I do. Okay. So, what I've learned through the years as people think that confidence is something that we're just born with, like brown hair or blue eyes or a third nipple.
Right?
I'm just seeing if you're listening. Like, you either have it or you don't, right? Like, some people are born and sure, to some degree, there are some people that seems to have an extra bit of confidence. But confidence is something that, for me, because I grew up very shy, very unsure of myself, the idea that I would ever speak in front of a crowd or run my own company was just the craziest thing I ever could have imagined.
Was that the poverty thing?
I
mean, was it growing up in that situation? Because as a seven's
I think
generally
so.
confident?
Oh no, not confident at all. And so grew up in poverty. My father died right before I was 3. So a car accident. I'm almost 3. My mom's in a body cast. She has no money. You know, she's grieving. And so I grow up in this way, and that kind of marks you. I don't feel like I got into my 7-ness until I was or my 7-ness didn't come out until I was maybe late 20s, early 30s.
Interesting.
I know, because the question of like, who were you when you were younger and your purest form of yourself, I have no idea. I think life was just too hard. And it wasn't until I got a little older and things stabled out that I could become who I always was. But the fear of, is anyone going to take care of me and am I going to be okay? That definitely marked me in my childhood. So that, created the 7 that I am now. But with confidence, go ahead.
You go ahead. But I do have a question for you when you're done. Go ahead. I don't want to interrupt you.
No. So what I've learned as being a shy, introverted kid who didn't have any confidence to doing what I'm doing now is that it is like anything else in our life. It's fluid and we can build it up. And we build it up just by taking action, because we always think we can't do anything and we start doing it badly. And we do it badly a little bit longer before we know it, we do it and it's not half bad. And that's the thing, when we're managing the voice of the inner critic, I think and we stop ourselves, or we have self-doubt and stop ourselves, we never get a chance to give ourselves grace to do things badly so we can become confident at it.
Yes.
I think so much of life is just going, I'm going to do this for a little while. It's going to suck. It's not going to work well, but I'm going to see how it goes. And before I know it, if I don't give up, I'm going to feel confident and I'm going to do it well.
Love that.
Isn't that great, Anthony? I think that that's that how fascinating approach. You know what I mean? It's that, okay, so I'm going to do this. It's not going to be great, or it's going to be subpar, whatever. But when I make a mistake, I'm just going to internally or even externally throw my hands up in the air and just yell how fascinating that this mistake occurred. And what am I going to do next? That will make it less likely.
And I think one of the things that helps is because I came up in the entrepreneurial world where the best and smartest thing we can do is fail fast and fail often. So failure is just something that's expected. in 2011, I was part of a startup, and we went through the rounds of funding, and it all, for one reason or another, blew up, and we rejected funding, and the whole thing just went up in smoke. And in entrepreneurial circles, people go, that's great, you got one under your belt. But to everyone else, they go, oh, I'm so sorry, it must be so terrible. When actually that's just a normal part of entrepreneurial life, is you fail fast and you fail often, you figure out what doesn't work, and you keep moving forward with something that will work.
What a gift for a 7 to give the world. It's one thing for us as a 4 to say, hey, it's going to be painful, but it's going to be all right. It's a completely different thing for a 7 to say, this is going to be painful, but it's going to be all right. I love that.
Yes, it is. You know what's interesting about you, Alli, is you're a little bit like Stephen Colbert.
I'll take that.
Yeah, right? And you're a little bit like Joe Biden, who I suspect is a 7.
You think he's a 7? Fascinating.
Yeah, it's really possible. Maybe a 2, but I don't think so. I think he has a lot of 7 qualities. But what makes Colbert interesting is that he suffered at a young age. You know, through the car accident with his family, losing a sibling, I can't remember if it was father or mother. Father having then to take care of his mother, who was debilitated by the experience.
Yeah.
See, and I think that in a way, some 7s, when you're counseling them, they'll be talking about their childhood and just randomly mention, oh, you know, that was like around the time that my mother died in that car accident, blah, 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 blah. And they skip right
then
over
a T-Rex came and ate my family, and then
Exactly.
I went to school the next day. Yeah.
Yeah, but I really learned a lot about dinosaurs in the process.
Yeah.
You know, they reframe it, right?
Yeah.
But some 7s, for whatever reason, actually allow the suffering unconsciously, because we're little people. It just deepens us. And rather than, so some 7s will skate along the top of an experience without ever knowing its meaning. I think most people go through life not understanding the meaning of the experiences they're having, you know. But 7s in particular, they're like water bugs. You know, those, I'm not sure what you call those, Anthony, those bugs that...
Oh, water spiders.
Yeah, they just kind of go like this. Yeah, they kind of just go along the surface of the water, but they never go deep. But sometimes life comes along and grabs you and plunges you into deep waters, whether it's, you know, this car accident, mom in a body cast, and then living under a bridge, you know, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, okay, well, I got 2 choices here. I can kind of go into denial or find some unhealthy way of coping with this suffering, or I can allow it. And then what will happen is magic. It's not pleasant, but it's magic. Hey, Typology Tribe. I want to take a moment to thank our sponsors for helping us bring you what I hope is great content every week. Now, you all know I'm a big proponent of counseling. Whether you feel like something is interfering with your happiness or preventing you from achieving certain goals, counseling is a great tool to help identify what those blocks are and then work through them. Yet finding a therapist can sometimes feel intimidating, but not with BetterHelp. BetterHelp offers online counseling at your own time and your own pace. You can schedule secure video or phone sessions plus text and chat with your therapist when it's convenient for you. These are licensed professional counselors who specialize in things like depression, anxiety, stress, relationships, LGBT matters, trauma, and grief. BetterHelp has counselors available worldwide and have over 3,000 U.S. licensed therapists across all 50 states. In fact, so many people have been using BetterHelp that they are recruiting additional counselors in all 50 states. And get this, if you're not satisfied with your counselor for any reason, you can request a new one at any time at no additional cost. Best of all, it's a truly affordable option. I want you to start living a happier life today. As a listener, you'll get 10% off your first month by visiting betterhelp.com/typologypodcast. Join over 1 million people taking charge of their mental health. Again, that's BetterHelp, HELP.com/typology podcast. TYPOLOGYPODCAST. Watch, if you ever get a chance, on YouTube, Biden Colbert interview on the Colbert Show.
I'll watch it tonight.
Yeah. Okay. So it's what I think are two sevens talking about suffering and trauma.
Wow.
And faith, and about how those experiences changed their lives. And what you're witnessing is, for me, brought tears to my eyes, is like, oh, these are two very evolved Enneagram 7s talking about, I want every Enneagram 7 to watch that interview to say, you could be that. You could still be a warm, funny, caring person and deep at the same time. You're not going to stop being funny if you start to deal with past pain or present pain or future pain. It's just going to make you joyful and deep.
Well, and I think I've always found myself a little too serious as a 7. I remember when I went home from that trip to Seattle and I gave my husband your book and I said, look, it is me. And he said, I'm not sure. And it took him a while to see the 7 in me, because I am way more serious than the average 7. So hearing you say that, it makes sense.
So what's your husband's type again?
He's a 3.
He's a 3, right.
Funny story, in counseling, years ago, we went to go see a counselor and we had told the counselor like all these things we had been through, the bankruptcy, his illness, all this. And he said, you guys are an amazingly happily married couple, but you don't talk about your emotions. You just hold hands and run into the future together. And we said, yes, we do. Why would we do anything different? And he gave us the homework of having to look at each other 3 times a day and to say whatever we were feeling. And we really struggled with it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we had to learn as a 7 and a 3 to figure out what we were feeling and talk about our emotions and not just run into the future together happily.
Well, it's interesting. I'm looking over here right now at the subtypes of 7s. And there are subtypes, as you probably know. Do you know what your subtype is?
Self-pres, totally.
You are self-pres. Yeah, that's what I would have said. So, the subtype really matters because it gives us the nuanced kind of stuff, that you're not going to get just by knowing the basics of our type, and you tend to be somebody that they're oftentimes called keepers of the castle, defenders of the castle. So things like family, group security. I'm not surprised now that you said the things that are very 6 about you, because as a self-preservation instinct type, you would be very concerned. Let's just leave the Enneagram aside. If your dominant instinct of the 3 most important instincts to human beings, which is self-preservation, where do I stand in the herd? That's the second one, the social subtype. And then the sexual or one-to-one, which is where am I in relationship to my special other? All of those have to do with personal survival, right? Like one is, how am I going to keep myself alive? The second one would be, how is the group going to keep me alive, right? And the third one is going to be, how is my special other going to be there for me to keep me alive should crisis hit? We all have all 3. One's dominant. If you're a self-pres, anything can sometimes get confused with 6.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, because you're very concerned about the basic necessities of life.
Right.
Like when you walk into a room, I'm a self-pres 4. So when I walk into a room, my attention immediately migrates to things like, where's the food?
Oh, yeah.
Like every afternoon at 2, I'll say to my wife, what's for dinner? And she's a sexual 9. She's like, what? It's 2:00. And I'm like, I know, but I'm already thinking about what we're having for dinner. Or
are we going to be okay? Is food coming? Is it going to be delicious?
Is it going to be, is there going to be enough? I'll walk into a room and I'll go, gosh, it's hot in here, or it's cold in here. I'm always thinking about things that will support my well-being. Like, it's not selfish. It's just I'm worried about personal survival. So I'm thinking it's too cold, it's too hot, it's too light, and then add my 4 in with the aesthetics. But self-preservation is such a big theme in your life, and taking care of others' basic necessities to make sure everyone's going to survive. So one of the things I would say to you is, actually, your self-preservation instinct is probably something you have overprivileged for too much of your life. And you want to bring it into balance with those 2 other instincts.
Oh, that's really good.
Yeah.
That's really hard in 2020.
Oh my gosh, and they're fluid. Like, for example, you may be self-pres right now, right? But when your husband's sick, you might get to the being more of a sexual 7, 1-to-1, kind of like obsessed. And it's like, how do we bring them all into balance so that we can call on the right instinct at the right moment and not use our dominant instinct in moments when it's not called for? Because we're over-relying on it, All right, you got this brand new book, September, Standing Strong, A Woman's Guide to Overcoming Adversity, Living with Confidence, coming out on Zondervan, September 2020, which is 16 days from the recording of this show. So people can, actually, it'll be out by the time this show airs. So everybody go get. I'm actually going to be the one who pre-orders. So everybody else, though, can now order this this book. Tell everybody else where they can find out about what you're doing, how corporate consultants can find out, people looking for consultants can find out. Give us all the information.
Sure. I'm Alli Worthington everywhere, ALLI Worthington. So Alli Worthington Show is the podcast. AlliWorthington.com is the website, and Alli Worthington on social media.
Great. And because I have a funky spelled name, I'm going to give people how to spell your name. It's ALLIWORTHINGTON.com. It is not Alli with an E or a Y. It's ALLI. And I've had such a good time speaking with you. I just have thought it was fantastic.
Well, thank you. This has been wonderful. I told you I was a little nervous. Like, what are you going to pull out of me? Because I'm fascinated with your ability to see through people. But thank you. I've learned so much.
Well, I've learned so much too, as I always do when I'm with other people who just human beings fascinate me. Well, Typology listeners, once again, thanks to Alli Worthington, and thanks to you for just being an integral, incredibly important part of our family. And though we don't know the vast majority of you, your presence is really palpable in my life on a daily basis. And please remember the words of the great Oscar Wilde: be yourself, everybody else is already taken. Until next time.